Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 42 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today we'll be doing a recap of 2015. It'll be a little bit of a shorter episode, but we will be reviewing the year, starting off with just talking about the year a little bit, and then we'll move into some listener feedback, and then recapping all the guests from the year, all the interviews that I've done on the show. And then I'll do a video clip. And then we'll have the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. I have a guest host today, Ron Wilder, who is the owner of Aligned Action. And more on that right before that segment. So let me back up and say happy holidays to everyone. It's a couple days before Christmas and just a great time of year. Hope everybody is really enjoying it and having the time and opportunity to enjoy it. So last year, around this time, we had approximately 13,000 iTunes downloads. And I'm happy to report that by the end of this year, the end of this month, we're tracking to have 54,000 iTunes downloads, which is just phenomenal to me. Up until now, iTunes has been the only way to listen to the podcast, aside from going to the website, GracieJujitsuRocks.com, and listening there. But I'm happy to announce that we're now up on Stitcher. I know a number of people have asked me, when that would happen, because they didn't use Apple products. So we're now on Stitcher. If you want to find us there, just do a search for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks within Stitcher, and you can check us out there. 2015 has been a really great year in a lot of ways. I started out the year early February with a trip to LA and was able to visit the academy, which is Hiken Machado's jiu-jitsu school, which was awesome. And then went to the Gracie Academy and spent several days training there, as well as some privates. And also was able to do seminars throughout the year, various locations. And a big highlight of the year was that I received my purple belt, and which is a huge, huge accomplishment for me. If you've listened to the podcast very long, you know that I actually started my jiu-jitsu journey way back in the early 90s. So looking at it in that context, it's taken quite a while to get to purple. But my journey, my martial arts journey, has taken me down quite a few roads and has had several twists and side roads and things like that. So I wasn't able to really ever stay in a situation or with an environment that I could progress through as I would like through jiu-jitsu, through the ranks. But in approximately 2009, it came back full circle, and I was able to kind of get laser focused on jiu-jitsu. So from then until now, I've been doing that, and very proud of the accomplishment of purple belt. Okay, let's do a little bit of listener feedback. I always love receiving listener feedback and then sharing that with the listening audience. So here is some of that right now. Okay, Jim Pfeiffer writes, "Great job, Marty. What a great podcast. I never want it to end." Nico DeHaan wrote, "Great podcast. Each episode rocks." Grant Brown wrote, "Awesome podcast. Keeps me entertained on the drive to work. Well done." And Derek Sang wrote, "Blown away by your Clay Mayfield interview. 22 years old. That's amazing." Alberto Alvarez wrote, "Your podcast with Professor Richard Bresler was great. I feel it's very important that the stories of the first American Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners are told. I feel that their stories of the Jiu-Jitsu Wild West are just as important as the red and coral belts." James Bell wrote, "Just listened to this a couple of days ago. Great podcast with a guy I've known for close to 30 years. Still can't believe he ended up being a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu icon." And he was referring to Henry Aiken. And Charles Haynes wrote, "Great show. I just started from the beginning. I'm in the middle of episode 2 now. I feel so much like these guys. I had been doing judo, catch wrestling, BJJ, the sportive version, for a decade off and on. When I found the Gracie Combatives program, it just changed everything. It's what I had been missing. Like Ty Gay said, I felt like I had pieces of the puzzle, but the Gracie program put it all together for me. My game has gotten so much better, and I feel so much more complete now. I'm working on the Master Cycle program now." So again, some of this was from feedback on the website. Some of it was from Facebook. So keep it up. Keep the comments coming. If you're enjoying the show, if you have any thoughts or questions or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. We love the comments, and any ideas you have for the show or suggestions are always appreciated. Okay, so started off the year with an interview with Javier Vasquez, and he was just about to compete in the Gracie Worlds against Gary Tonin. So I interviewed him. Next was episode 24. It was Frank Cucci, and Pedro Silva black belt, and owns the world-famous Lynx Academy in Virginia Beach. Episode 25 was with Stuart Cooper, and you probably know Stuart Cooper makes amazing jiu-jitsu films and documentaries. They're really, really awesome. I've featured clips from them through several of my episodes, so it was a thrill to be able to interview Stuart. He was over in Thailand when we did the interview. Next, in episode 26, was Steve Maxwell, fitness guru extraordinaire, and Steve is always an interesting person to speak with. So if you haven't heard that, of course, you need to check that out. Episode 27 was with Higan Machado. I named the episode Higan Machado Interview and Marty's Excellent Adventure. This is when I went out to the Gracie Academy and went out to LA and was able to do a private with Higan Machado and then do a short interview with him. Episode 28 was with Grandmaster Horion Gracie. I was able to sit down with him one-on-one at the Gracie Academy in the famous museum, and we spoke about the early days in the UFC, and then spent a lot of time discussing the Gracie diet, which of course is his new passion and mission. Episode 29, I interviewed Heateron Gracie, and this was just within a week, a few days after his Metamoris match with Josh Barnett. So it's very interesting to hear his thoughts on that. Episode 30 was with Henry Aiken, and Henry is a very interesting guy. I really enjoyed doing that interview. Episode 32 was part 1 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the Older Practitioner episode. So part 1 started out with a short interview with Ed Solis of Old Man Jiu-Jitsu, and then a short segment with Guido Janinguez of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Over 50, a little show he started. And then I had many interviews with several practitioners that had started later in life, including George Ziliaks, David Gordon, Kurt McKissick, Jerry Thrower, and Johnny Judd. Episode 33 was the second part of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the Older Practitioner. Started out with an interview with Steve Whittier of 40 Plus BJJ Success, and then interviewed Frank Duffy, Richard Bresler, Eric Silver, and Brian Orovets. Many interviews there, so check that out. Episode 34 was an interview with Jeff Curran, former UFC fighter as well as Strikeforce and Pride and a number of other MMA organizations. And he's also a Pedro Sauer black belt. Episode 35 was with Hideron Gracie, brought him back to answer listener questions. Episode 36 was with John Michael Calcalini, and he is a Helson Gracie black belt. Episode 37 was a full interview with Richard Bresler, considered Rorion Gracie's first full-time student, and he had a lot of great old stories of back in the old days and when things were just starting out in LA. Episode 38 was an interview with Eric Paulson. And Eric Paulson, of course, is legendary fighter and MMA coach. Been around forever. Also had some great stories from way back in the day. And he's also the coach to Josh Barnett. Episode 39, I had the privilege of interviewing Rich Ace Franklin, former UFC middleweight champion. It's awesome being able to speak with Rich, who was over in Singapore when we did the interview. Episode 40 was with Luis Lamau Heredia, and very interesting. He was in Hawaii when we did the interview. He came over with Hickson many years ago, way back during the day, I think as a purple belt, and has spent the last 20 plus years developing his jiu-jitsu, spreading it, and he's trained with everybody. So great interview there. Check it out. Finally, the last episode 41, besides this one for this year, was with Phil, the Jiu-Jitsu Matrix Miglaris. And he is a Helson Gracie black belt and owns and operates a school up in the Philadelphia area. The only person that I interviewed that was not featured in an episode this year was Professor Pedro Sauer. I went to a seminar back in, I think it was August of this year, at Integrated Martial Arts School that Mark Kukro owns, and in North Carolina. And a great seminar. And I had the awesome opportunity to sit down one-on-one with Professor Sauer. Unfortunately, before I could save the interview and start to edit it, my program crashed, and there was no backup, and it was just gone. So really hated that. I do hope to get another interview with him, probably by phone, in the coming months. So because I didn't get to actually feature him in an episode, I want to play a short clip of Professor Sauer talking during one of his seminars. I think this one was in Hawaii. So check this clip out by Professor Sauer.
We have to understand everybody else's technique. Everybody has their favorite moves here. If you let everybody does their favorite moves against you, eventually you're going to understand everybody's favorite moves. But if you try to stop every move that comes against you, what happens is you're going to be very limited. And eventually you're going to find guys that are going to catch you in a surprise move and you're like, man, I haven't seen this. Yeah, I haven't seen that because you never let it happen. But if you do that happen in the beginning, and you let people relax and train very loose, you will experience an incredible amount of techniques coming towards you. People are going to try to submit in 7 different ways. And if the guy tap you, that's another thing I like to say to everybody in the mat, is the nicest thing we have in jiu-jitsu is this. It's a tap. Tap is the best thing you can do in jiu-jitsu. Just think about this. You pair up against somebody and you roll for like half an hour. But when the guy finally gets your hands in the neck, you just do this, and the guy has to let go. After half an hour for it. That's fair. Think about that. And they're only hurting your ego, if you do have ego. If you don't have ego, it doesn't hurt at all. So basically, that's the thing you should always looking for. You know, anytime you have a chance to tap for the silly moves, for any move that comes against you, tap. Just tap. And you're going to understand, every position has a dangerous techniques that can happen over there. And the more you tap, the more you see it. If you don't tap, if you never tap, you never see it. And the hours the years that I've been putting jiu-jitsu in America, I've seen the incredible amount of talented guys, and I've seen a lot of talented guys training. And I'm telling you, the best way, my best students, is the one that tap the most. So I see that how change you can get, how more finesse you can get, and the hours, like you said, the hours you can have a 4 minutes of experience, very tough experience, or you can have 1 hour of experience. So if you slow down, you're going to have an hour of experience. You're going to have an hour of people attacking you. If you go very fast, very tough, very rough, not so many people are going to try to get you. It's going to be really hard to get you. And you just practice the submission. And the way how to learn jiu-jitsu is from the bottom up. You got to learn from defending first. When you know how to defend, you're going to know how to attack. When you know how to defend, you're going to know that when you are step behind, when somebody wrestles you, I'm too late now, that's it, I got to tap. So you're gonna know exactly when it's time for you to attack, when it's time to defend. You knows that. If you always attack, the day that somebody puts in your bag and you don't know how to defend, I've seen that happen. I seen one of the toughest guys I have in my school. One time he went to Brazil for a no-holds bar, and he got triangle like that. You know why? Because this guy this guy was so tough. He always on top. He always aggressive. Nobody could catch the guy. He's always a tough. So the day that he was out of shape and he was on no-holds bar, the first chance somebody had putting him, he was tapped. So defend first, survive, and that's the healthy life in the gym.
Okay, Professor Sauer always has really great words of wisdom for sure. All right, continuing on, let's move to our Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. And again, the guest for today's segment is Ron Wilder. Ron owns Aligned Action and works with professionals and CEOs on developing their full capacity and reaching higher and higher levels of performance. He is also currently completing the ICP Instructor Candidate Program through the Gracie Academy. So here's Ron now.
Hi, this is Ron Wilder. Welcome to the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. In addition to training in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I run my own business called Aligned Action, and every day I work with executives, entrepreneurs, salespeople, business owners to really help them become more successful in leading their businesses, increasing sales, being more effective leaders, and overall increasing their success in life. So I'd like to share with you 4 questions you can ask yourself to increase your success, wealth, and happiness going into 2016. So if you think about success in any endeavor, there's really 4 things that are necessary. Number 1, you need to know your destination. Number 2, you need to know where you are right now. Number 3, you need to know what path you're on to get from where you are right now to your destination. And number 4, you need to stay on the path. So let me give you an example applied to my own journey in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. my destination that I desire to get to is to train for the rest of my life. And I would call that being on the path to mastery. So that would mean ultimately earning a black belt and being able to teach others through a certified training center, and maintaining my health and fitness so that I'm able to train well into my 90s. Where am I right now? Well, currently I'm a blue belt working on the Stripe 1 material. What is the path? The path for me is to really complete the Stripe 1 curriculum and then move on to the Stripe 2 curriculum and so forth to purple belt and onward towards black belt. How well am I staying on the path? I think I'm doing a pretty good job, and I train several times a week, and I'm pretty focused on making sure that training is effective and that I'm integrating things as I go and not getting too far ahead of myself. So that's an example of applying those 4 questions to jiu-jitsu. And after you ask those 4 questions, you can ask yourself a 5th question, which is based on those 4 questions. What's my level of confidence on a scale of 1 to 10 that I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve? And I feel really good about that. I feel like if I keep doing what I'm doing, I understand it will take me a long time. It may take me 15 years, but I'll ultimately get to where I want to go. And that's great. I'm really happy with that. So now let's take a look at these 4 questions in terms of, what are the most common mistakes? So if number 1 is knowing your destination, most common mistake is that people have an incomplete definition of success, or they're not really clear on where they want to go. So notice when I talked about training towards mastery, it's not just getting a belt, it's also being able to teach and maintaining my health. So I have a more holistic definition of what success is. The second most common mistake is being in denial about current reality. People tend to overestimate where they actually are. So, for example, I know in my own training, as I look at the curriculum that I'm working on right now, there are some areas that if I'm really honest about it, they're not as sharp as I'd like them to be. And really being honest about that is critical to assessing what are my next steps need to be. And it actually means going back and working on that. The third most common mistake is not being clear on the actual path or being tempted by other paths. And then the fourth one is distractions that keep you off of the path or get in the way of staying on the path. So you can apply these questions to your business. So for example, you might ask, what are my sales goals for 2016? Number 2, where am I right now in terms of generating those sales, and what is my skill level in terms of generating sales? Number 3 would be like, what is a specific strategy I'm going to use to increase more sales? And then number 4 gets to, staying on the path. Like, what are your sales habits on a daily and weekly basis that will keep you on track to achieve those goals? You can also apply it to your family or relationships, for example. Take a look at your family and ask yourself, what does a great family mean to you? And what do you want in terms of those relationships? And then say, well, where are you actually right now? What is the state of those relationships? Number 3 would then look at, well, what would be the path to improve that? And number 4 would be making sure that you adhere to that. So for example, if you imagine a family where you're really engaged and connected with each other, but if you look at where you are right now, you don't really spend a lot of good time together. Maybe one strategy, one part of that path would be to make sure that you eat meals together, several times a week, as a dedicated time with no devices or screens or, no distractions. And then staying on that path would be making sure that you put those times in place and adhere to that so that you actually then begin to create the success and the wealth and the happiness that you want. So hope that helps you prepare for 2016. Best wishes to you going into the new year.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thanks, Ron, for being the guest Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment host. And thank you to everyone listening. I really want to sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to the show and for giving feedback. Everybody that's provided feedback, I really do appreciate it. It's really what keeps me going, knowing how it's affected people, knowing how you're enjoying it, and what, if any, impact it's had on you. So keep it coming. Love to hear the feedback, any thoughts, suggestions, anything like that you have for the show. Thanks for helping make this an incredible year for me, and look forward to the next year. My sincere desire for you going into the next year is treat this time as a time to reset, if you will. Out with the old, in with the new. Treat it as a clean slate. Really decide and get clear what you want out of this next year. What do you want out of 2016? And visualize it, work for it, and make it happen. Make this be your best year ever. All right, if you haven't liked us on Facebook or Twitter, please do so. Again, we always like your comment. Please leave feedback either on the website or on iTunes. And again, thank you so much for being part of the show and listening. Don't forget to tell your friends about it. And as always, this is Marty Josie. And until next time, I'll see you on the mat.